of the larger fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry. We have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship.
Hi, DC.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good something, whether it's morning or noon.
Right.
Hey, who's that? Is that Bella?
This is Gracie.
Gracie, right.
My dog. And this is The View, Voices of Unitarian Universalism.
Yes.
I'm Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her, and I come to you from the land of the Coast Salish people in Seattle, also known as Seattle, Washington. Where are you, DC?
Hi, I am DC Fortune, and I am coming to you from central Pennsylvania in the ancestral lands of the Susquehannock people and along the shores of the North Branch of the Susquehanna River, which drains into the Chesapeake Bay somewhere down along the way. And it's a sort of a moderately crappy sort of, it looks like Seattle out there.
It's
It's cloudy and damp and yeah. So yeah, looks like Seattle, but the coffee's not as good.
Yeah, the coffee's not. I don't doubt that. I don't mind the weather here, probably because I didn't get here till I was in my 40s. So I've been here 11 years, and I actually, I don't miss the snow. So because of that, I feel like, okay, the trade-off is we get some gray. So I want to let folks know that I am 1/3 of the lead ministry team of the CLF, and my 2/3, Reverend Dr. Michael Tino and Chris Rivera, are not with us today. And DC and I will be the entire show. So we have a lot to talk about.
Unsupervised.
And I'm doing tech. So if you see me look to the right, it's because I have a whole nother computer working.
Okay.
And so this is like it'll be fun, and well, sometimes it'll be fun. It'll also be pretty depressing, I imagine, at times, given everything that's going on. But let's start with there's massive flooding. Hurricane Helene came through and caused a heck of a lot of damage. Roads have been in North Carolina, in, I believe, Tennessee, and apologies that I don't have exact locations on my mind right now because I've been thinking about what's going on in the Middle East, which we'll get to. But I'm just curious, how climate change, the climate revival. Thank you to the College of Social Justice, UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association, and many other partners.
Wicked timely, we'd say.
Who came together last weekend all over the country to say, hey, we need to continue to pay attention to what's going on in the climate. So how were you where you are, was that impacted at all by the storms?
Other than looking like Seattle for 2 weeks, no, not really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we got a bunch of rain where I am, but it seemed to sort of fizzle out. We didn't get the wind that other people got. Like some folks in Massachusetts, for instance, seemed to be getting wind, and I was like, I don't know how. Either we didn't get it or I didn't notice.
Oh, okay.
Could be either. But I was holed up staring at my computer last week because I serve on the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. And so that was affected by the weather because we had one candidate who lives in Atlanta and said, oh, I should find higher ground where I'll be safe. And because Atlanta's, sort of closer to the coast-ish, whatever. And so they went up to the mountain, the retreat center in the mountain in North Carolina. Yeah. And poor person, they didn't have power, didn't have internet, didn't have cell phone service, and they were not able to see the ministerial, they were not able to see the panel. And so the panel met yesterday. The half a dozen people who were on that particular panel met with this person yesterday once they got back down to someplace dry with internet service. And I saw on Facebook that they did pass the MFC and there was much celebration.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, the MFC was, we had people all over. We didn't happen to have anybody in that particular part of the country aside from that one candidate.
Oh, wow. And thank you. And kudos to the MFC for meeting with them at a different time, because
absolutely, yeah.
This was one of those, you know what? I'm going to stop saying acts of God because it's acts of humanity. It's our fuckery that got us to not fixing
1209. Aisha. Sorry. I have these little stickies all over my desk with times and names. Who says fuck first?
You're hilarious.
Sorry.
No, I love it. Anyway, so I think, I'm not going to say acts of God anymore because these are acts of humanity and human beings who are choosing to be obtuse. We are choosing to be obtuse. There's no way around that. And I'm just not here for it. So
I love you so much. I want to send you hugs. It has been a shit-tastic year.
This week has been so. Let's move to a lighter topic, the Middle East.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
I did a one session workshop discussion. It wasn't a workshop, it was a discussion. A couple weeks ago. How do we not other people? How do we not become what we hate, right? So pastorally and spiritually, this concept makes a whole lot of sense. I am opposed vehemently to the actions of the radically out of control right-wing Israeli government.
Correct.
And it is important that I remember that they are human beings and we are all capable of not following our higher selves.
Of fuckery.
Of all fuckery. And the United States has been actively funding the dehumanization of Palestinians for decades. And this past year has been actively funding a genocide that is spreading to Lebanon. And now the Israelis have been poking the Iranian bear, and now the bear is biting back, and suddenly it's listen to what's happening.
Who could have predicted this? Oh, Devins, right?
It's even more insidious because now when Israeli civilians are impacted or in harm's way, suddenly it's unacceptable to murder civilians. Is it? Okay, then why was it okay to murder Palestinian civilians and Lebanese civilians and now Iranian civilians? Because Netanyahu just addressed the Iranian people and said the war is not with them. I bet that, because so now we're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of Lebanese civilians slaughtered. Iranian. Look, I'm no fan of the Iranian government. However, comma, the people are the ones who are going to be impacted. So the enormity of the hypocrisy cannot be overstated. Cannot be overstated. And you cannot continue to say you're defending yourself when you are quite literally bombing people. And then when those folks defend themselves, then suddenly it's an issue. Make it make sense. I don't.
Right. This is Jimmy Cagney walking into a bar and kicking the big guy in the nuts and saying, he can't pick on me because I'm small. You know, like, sorry, you can't be doing that. Look, oh, you know, this is one of those what I used to call it first principle crises, right? Like, how do I hold the inherent worth and dignity of people as intent on doing evil harm as Netanyahu, and how do I hold that person, as you know, we say, a child of God like everyone else? And there's a couple of ways. You know, there are some who say, yes, he was born with inherent worth and dignity, and he pissed that out the window. That's his choice. And then there's another set of thinking that says he has inherent worth and dignity, and he is worth salvation and the love of the divine, whatever. And honestly, in that case, like, I can trust that this person has worth and dignity to the divine. And I'm just glad that I'm not the divine and I don't have to go find it today. You know, that's above my pay grade. I will just trust that God will figure that out, if there is such a thing as a God. That yeah, that's above my pay grade. You know, it ain't my job to go find it today. Can't do it. And we have to name it when people do evil things. We can't just continue to say, well, they're misunderstood. You know, people said that about my abusive father. Well, he's just misunderstood. No. When you hit people, that's bullshit. Yeah. When you bomb hospitals, that's bullshit. I don't care what your problem is. Bombing a hospital is not the answer.
Thank you.
Right? Bombing children is never the answer. I don't care what problem you've got.
Right.
Bombing children is not a solution. Period.
Whew. You know, to that point, I think what the powers that be are underestimating is how many people in the world have been impacted by emotional abuse, gaslighting, and lying. So what's happening right now with Netanyahu basically gaslighting the world, and our government also gaslighting the world, is like, we know what this looks like. This is emotional abuse and gaslighting, and saying that the lives of one group of people are worth more than another group of people. Yes. And interpersonally, when it's happened to us, your dad felt he had the power over you and whoever else he was abusing, and was perfectly justified in his head, or was a complicated, you know, whatever his excuses people make around us for those who cause harm. And the same thing. So what occurred to me actually this morning, I was thinking about it, is I think the seeds being sown right now through all this behavior is not going to keep anyone safe, because the narrative is the only, you know, Israel's the only safe place for Jewish people, which is anti-Semitic in my opinion. How on earth? Why if somebody said to me the only safe place for you is Egypt, I'd be like, I'm fucked then, because I'm not going back to Egypt to live. So like, what in the world? Like, how are we creating a world where we're saying there's one group of people that's only safe on this teeny piece of land that has to have apartheid and live under tanks and have bomb shelters, and somehow that's a reasonable way to exist? Like, I don't,
Yeah.
the narrative, I'm not buying what you're selling. And
Right.
I believe Jewish people need to be safe everywhere in the world. So do
Right.
Muslim people. So do people who, you know, I mean, I mean, liberation. We're all our destinies are tied together.
Correct.
And so I think what is being underestimated emotionally, and the part that is so, in addition to everything else, tragic and heart-wrenching and scary,
Hmm.
there is abuse happening, and that we're not being there is a collective horror, genocide, all of that on a macro level.
Hmm.
And how this is playing out in my body is, we're letting abusers run amok. We're letting abusers,
Yes.
we're funding abuse of entire
Yes.
populations, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Lilani, we got a comment here from Lilani D, who says, yes, that safety argument is so rooted in white supremacy culture.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
You know what's like, you hit something really interesting about the trauma and the body thing. And I don't know if it's just Western culture, but Gen X and those that have come after us have a much clearer understanding of trauma and what it does to our bodies and how it affects our brain chemistry and our behavior stuff and all of that stuff. And so we are able to name it and describe it and address it in ways that have never happened before, because we have language and an understanding. And I'm thinking of, we now have millions of people who have this awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see something happening, we feel it, like you said, in our bodies, right? We feel it in our bodies. And I'm remembering 8 years ago, Jesus, Mary. Okay. 8 years ago, during that god-awful presidential debate where the hate pumpkin stalked Hillary around the debate stage.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And anybody I knew who'd been traumatized had an adrenaline spike watching that thing.
Yes. Yes.
And I was pastoring 2 congregations in that moment.
Yes.
I was doing halftime at 2 different congregations. And like, I was like, and I, as a trauma survivor, was sort of like breathing into a paper bag at home, watching this and saying, I need to respond in a pastoral way to my people who are in their homes, also having this experience, and their partners who were like, what the hell's wrong with you?
That's right.
Right. And boy, howdy. And so now, like, that's one of the first times when I realized that there was a much larger understanding of trauma responses, you know, and it feels like since that time, our understanding has only grown and deepened.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when we see it, we are much more articulate and much more able to describe what we're seeing and what we're feeling, and saying, oh, hell no, I know you've been saying this for years, blah, blah, blah. But what you're saying is still the same old bullshit that maybe once you got away with, but doesn't happen. And you can't do it anymore. That's bullshit. Lilani writes again, I agree. BIPOC healers in spaces I've been in have been talking about what's happening in our bodies right now the embodiments and somatic experiences of witnessing multiple genocides now.
Whew,
Yeah.
Leilani, yes,
Yeah.
the enormity of seeing so many people in power discount
Yeah.
their entire generations of Palestinians that have been wiped out, their entire families in Lebanon that have been wiped out. That's just in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Now, like I said, I mean, Palestinians have been saying from the beginning they're not going to stop at Gaza and the West Bank, and they also want parts of Syria.
Yep.
What? Like it's and we're what
And when we say they,
Israelis,
the Israeli governments,
the Israeli government, and I do want to say a very, very hard thing. I've heard people say this is the Israeli government, not the Israeli people. It has only been, now, mind you, the Israeli in general, there's been protests against Netanyahu. However, there's also been an uncomfortable amount for me of Israeli civilians who think this is the price of freedom. And if those of you doubt me, please watch any of the John Olivers in the last few months. He did 2 super compelling programs, one on the West Bank and one on what's going on in Gaza. And you could hear Israeli citizens themselves either applaud the genocide or say this is the price of what we need, that are very, very comfortable with the idea that in order for Israel to exist, it has to subjugate the Palestinians. And that is a fundamental.
It has to eradicate.
And so I'm saying that it is not a complete story to say this is only the Israeli government. It is
fair.
And I know that's a third rail. People aren't allowed to say that. But it's the truth. And unless we tell the truth, we're not going to be able to get to any kind of resolution of this. And so I think, 11 million people died in the Holocaust. 11 million. 6 million of them, yes, were Jewish people. Catholics died. LGBTQ people died. Romani had a few million. I mean, it was a horrific,
The Germans were equal opportunity assholes.
Well, and created a system that said that the Nazis and the white Germans who fit a certain mold were better than everyone else. It was a supremacy culture. Mm-hmm. When you create any supremacy culture, this is the result, is that then you dehumanize anyone who was not part of that culture. We saw it with the enslavement of Africans and the genocide of indigenous people here in this continent, the United States and Canada. And so there is a reality that is uncomfortable because we want to pretend that people in government aren't part of the population. And that's simply not true.
Right.
And so how do we appeal to how do we maintain? Here's what I ask myself. I'll speak for myself. How do I maintain my humanity, not dehumanize even the people in power? How do I do that? Because there are times where I vacillate between rage and despair and sadness and tears. You've seen me. I've cried through storms. I mean, and so Norman Finkelstein, who is the child of Holocaust survivors, a Jewish man, has been clear that the state of Israel and the Zionist project has used the Holocaust as weaponized it. And he doesn't use the word anti-Zionism at all. He talks about Jewish supremacy. Norman Finkelstein, and you could Google it. The ADL has called him anti-Semitic, and how heartbreaking. This is a person who is holding up the tenets of a beautiful faith. The Jewish faith and the Israeli state are 2 different things. And the Jewish faith is a beautiful one. Happy New Year. It is Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
Which
it is Rosh Hashanah
today,
yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yeah.
And tomorrow. And next week it is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And so Happy New Year, to those who observe. Jewish faith is a beautiful faith. And it has been used to annihilate Palestinians and now Lebanese. And I don't know where, and we can only get to justice and peace with the truth. I'm going to now show this. I want to be clear that I am not lumping Jewish
Okay.
all Jewish people together. And I'm not saying anyone's a monolith. In fact, I said Norman Finkelstein is a survivor, is a child of the survivor of Holocaust, is a Jewish man.
Right.
Who was very clear that the state of Israel and Judaism are not equal. And
So can I just like to, because I do this same sort of thing, and I struggle, right, parsing the difference, and I think about 8 years ago, when what's his ass managed to eke out an electoral college win, right? And the world looked at every American and said, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Yeah, okay, so he's in power. What do you like? Why, do whatever it is that you democracy people do and get rid of him. And we couldn't. You know, and there are an unfortunate number of Americans who think he was right.
Yep.
And there are a number of us who think he was quite wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But there were not enough of us who think he is wrong, who also were willing to violate our own rules, you know, about like we can't be those whom we hate. We can't become the monsters that oppressed us. We can't overthrow a government and then complain that somebody wanted to overthrow a government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been nice if we, the people, had the clout to force our Congress critters to behave better. But we don't, our voices were not loud enough to drown out the other voices. And so the world looked at the United States as this gun-toting, giant pickup truck driving, bacon wrapped around steak eating monolith of knuckle dragging, mouth breathing, whatever else you want to say, backwards idiots, while our president and his cohort behaved like P. Diddy, right, and assaulted everybody, and we all felt powerless to stop it. So I imagine that there are some folks in Israel who are feeling much like we did during that time.
Oh, yeah.
And wish to hell we could freaking make this nutball stop what he's doing, right? But think about the despair we all felt.
So I want to, yes, and
okay.
I didn't say it was all Israelis. I'm saying it's
no, you did not. You did not.
Comfortable than we want to believe it's 8 people who are running the Israeli government that are doing all of this.
Correct.
That's not true.
Right.
And it wasn't true when Trump was in office.
Correct.
That was only 12 people. It was half of this. The presidential race right now, according to polls, is still tied. So we have a problem in this country of we still have it is still a problem of that we need to be honest with ourselves as a United States nation, that we have an uncomfortable amount of people that believe we should be a white supremacist nation, even if they're not saying that.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I did not at all.
No, you did not
say it was all anybody, because I'm not saying anybody's a monolith. And there is an uncomfortable, it is not, even if let's say Israeli society is half of the people think it's perfectly reasonable to annihilate Gaza, and the other half is devastated, as we are, that there is a group of people who think that Gaza needs to be annihilated, or actually all Palestinians. They're not going to stop at Gaza. Right. And so I think that's the thing that is, because we can't get to peace and harmony or any kind of justice until we tell the truth. Leilani said, it's pretty clear DC and Asia are holding complexities of humans not being of one narrative and comments like this can be used to derail hard truth and deflect them from bigger issues. Thank you, Lilani. That's exactly it. Thank you. Because what happens is, as soon as someone says something like this, then it shuts down the whole. And I'm not going to be afraid of the truth anymore, because this is the least I can do. The least I can do is wear a keffiyeh and tell the truth about the annihilation of an entire people.
Right. So here's one of the things that frustrates me about being an ethical human being and understanding justice and fighting for justice and liberation, is that precludes me being able to label a particular group as other than human. Right? Which is like, the argument would be a whole lot easier if I could make a blanket statement, right? But we as ethical people cannot do that, because we understand it is complex, and we understand, every human has the capacity for enormous good, enormous evil.
Again, I will reiterate, no one has said blanket anything. I do want to say this. The only complexity is in the storytelling. There is nothing complex about saying stop committing a genocide. That is not complex. There's no complexity in saying stop arming a genocidal regime. Stop doing it. That's not the only complexity that gets brought in are people who make excuses for reasons for genocide. That is the part that I'm trying to bring home, is that no, there is no monolith from any group of people.
Correct.
And there are enough of a group of people within Israel and is now running the government. There are enough of the group of people to sign on to genocide. Right. There are enough of a group of people in the United States of America that is funding this genocide. It would end in 3 days if we stopped sending arms and if we stopped sending money. This is on us. This is our tax dollars. So we are not absolved. I live in this country. I fucking hate what's going on, but there's too many people that have signed on to it. I have been so disappointed. I'm going to now take a little bit of a left turn and I'll come back. I promise. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I used to hold her in such high esteem. And then at the Democratic National Debate Convention.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was not a huge fan of her speech. It was kind of bullshit, because she said, Kamala's working tirelessly to bring a ceasefire. That's a bullshit statement. And as Rashida Tlaib called her out, and Ilhan Omar called her out and said that's not a thing. Because guess what? We could stop arming Israel tomorrow, and this genocide would end. Nobody's tirelessly doing shit except continue. And now we're sending fucking troops. So what the fuck? Yeah. I refuse. I'm living in fucking Seattle, Washington, knowing that there are generations, children being obliterated. And then the narrative that we're told is, well, they're going to grow up to be Hamas. What? No, I'm not going to fucking back down.
No.
And pretend that that's not what's happening.
No. And Leilani said, people centering their discomfort at witnessing truth is fragility. And it is really hard for Americans, people of the United States, because that's different from America, who have been raised and taught when we are little bitty children that the United States is the best, right? And we grow up being fed American exceptionalism. And, it's sort of like when you go off to college for the first time and you meet people who aren't like you, and you're like, oh, wow. All that shit I was taught was way off base, right? And you come home and suddenly the racist jokes that Uncle Charlie makes aren't funny anymore.
That's right.
And you call that shit out at Thanksgiving and you're the problem.
Right.
Right. So we as a culture are experiencing this now, right? We've grown up with American exceptionalism. And now there's a number of us who have gone off to college and come back and say, "Ho, that's racist bullshit." And the people who are screaming that's racist bullshit are made into the psychological terms, the designated patient.
That's right.
The person that gets
identified patient. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we see this in addiction as well. Like the purpose of any system is to perpetuate the system.
Yes.
Okay. When an alcoholic gets sober, the rest of the family convulses because they don't know how to handle this new person with this new behavior. And quite often they will unwittingly engage in stuff that brings the person back to using, because at least that's predictable. And they won't point fingers at us and make us look at our own shit.
That's right.
Okay. And so I think that's a tiny bit of what we're experiencing as a country.
Right.
You know, we've got some members who are like, "Oh shit, this is dysfunctional and awful, and we need to be aware of our own toxic behavior and be prepared to change that behavior and do things that are different and stop being a dick." And the rest of the nation, the rest of the family is like, "Oh, hell no, you're not going to tell me I'm at fault. Oh, hell no, you're not going to tell me I'm a white supremacist, I'm a racist." Well, honey, if you grew up in the US and you do not have brown skin, you're racist. In the same way a fish is wet.
Well, because you've been conditioned into it. I mean, and sexism. I mean, those who, I think, yes, to everything you're saying. I'm putting up right now a link to a YouTube channel that's also really a podcast, Bad Hasbara. It is hosted by Matt Lieb and Daniel Mate. Daniel Mate is the son of Gabor Mate, who was a Holocaust survivor whose entire family was wiped out in the Holocaust. They're both have been countering the propaganda that has come out of the Israeli government and the Hasbara, the storytelling of why the rationalization of genocide. So they have guests from Israel, they have guests who are Palestinian, they have journalists, and it's been, I mean, when I say a balm on my soul, this show, because it is voices of Jewish, and there's Jewish voices for peace. There are many, there are Sephardic Jewish people and people who very much are observant Jewish people who, because the Jewish faith is a beautiful faith, who do not sign on to this idea that the only way to safety is annihilation. And that is what's the word? Contradictory, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It is a mutually exclusive concept. You cannot have safety through the annihilation of another people. Now the line is, the gaslighting line is de-escalation through escalation. That's just made up, and it's a excuse to murder, to expand the war in the region, and then blame the people. How come Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria don't have the right to defend themselves? How come?
Right. I've decided that I get so frustrated sometimes, and you've seen me do this when I get on my little rant about the way some ministers treat their religious educators.
Yep.
Right. Where I just get mad, and all I want to do is yell, and I don't necessarily have any words or ways to make noise that make any sense. There's this wonderful little Frenchie named Walter who has his own YouTube channel, and all he does is complain. And he's just, and there are so many days where I feel like that's just like that's all I want to do is just rah, 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 rah. Like, is nobody listening? Is nobody listening? and negotiating gradual things in this situation makes no sense. Like how much, like, okay, suppose we tone it down. So tell me what kind of minimized Holocaust is okay? What kind of minimized, what sort of compromise is there on genocide? Is it okay if we just do some people? Like which ones?
Right.
Like just the ones that are old enough to join the army? But that doesn't seem to be the, like, and that's okay to, like what is an acceptable level of genocide? There is none.
Right.
There is no compromise on that.
There was a young, who appeared to be a woman, young adult, in front of the Israeli embassy. There's YouTube's on it. It's on TikTok. Who approached? There have been pro-Palestinian vigil sitting in front of the Israeli embassy in DC since this all started.
Uh-huh.
And this woman walks up to them and basically is like, "What are we supposed to do? We have to protect our families." And my answer to her, I wasn't there, I just watched it, like kind of out loud, I said, "Not commit genocide." So you're saying you want to protect your family and your society. How is that protection to annihilate? And how about not commit genocide? I'm going to talk about the sermon I did from Belfast to Gaza. The United States very much, and you said George Mitchell's parents or grandparents from Lebanese. I didn't know that.
His parents are from Lebanon. Yep.
His parents, so he's of Lebanese descent.
Yep.
He was instrumental, and Bill Clinton, in bringing peace to Ireland, to Northern Ireland specifically.
Correct.
They gave sovereignty to the people of Northern Ireland, even the ones who very much want Ireland reunification. And the Irish people, there were many bombings. Ask people who lived through the Troubles how many bombings there were, how many people died and were maimed. Yep. They brought peace to that region by giving the Irish sovereignty. The Palestinian people, since 1948, since the Nakba, have not fucking had sovereignty. And I refuse to believe and to buy it. I refuse to buy into the narrative that there is something inherently violent about Arabs. I'm an Arab. Fuck that narrative that there's the narrative is they want us dead. Mm-hmm. Well, here's what's interesting about that narrative. Who is committing the genocide? And there's never, I'm not going to even ask the question. I'm going to say a declarative statement. Since the Nakba in 1948, the Palestinians have never been allowed sovereignty, ever. The United Nations has recognized Israel as an occupying state. And again, if you don't believe me, watch John Oliver's entire segment on the West Bank. Israel is an apartheid state. You don't have to like that that's being said, but just because I don't say it doesn't mean it's not the truth.
Right.
And so not only has Israel been in an apartheid state, Palestinians have never, ever, ever lived freely and with sovereignty. And so, so there is what people, because kids, look what happened to people. There's I believe is a Nigerian student, and forgive me that I don't remember the school. I don't know if it's UCLA or maybe Columbia. There's a Nigerian student that's facing deportation because he's speaking out for Palestine. This is happening now. So I just want to make sure that there is the people being punished in this country are those speaking out for Palestine. The ones that are saying, Leilani, thank you for being basically one of the co-hosts today. Less truth teller. I'm personally finding in folks personal trauma is so activated and they're acting out of those places. Justification, minimization. That is very true. Rather than facing truth like complicity. Amen and ashe, friend. Amen and ashe.
Yeah.
That is the truth.
None of us wants to acknowledge that we share responsibility for such a horrible thing. And so, and having grown up Irish Catholic, just outside of Boston, the power of denial
Whew.
The power of denial. Don't you say those things about Monsignor. Don't
Yeah.
you say those things about Father John. Don't you say those things. That can't be true. What's wrong with you?
That's right.
Growing up as kids, we all knew which priests did what. We all knew. And we knew that if we told, we would be punished.
Mm,
That's what the kids knew.
mm,
Okay.
mm.
And our parents are the ones, our parents and our grandparents were the ones who had to deal with their own complicity when the story broke. When the story in the Boston Globe, the Spotlight story broke, and it was earth-shattering for our parents, for our grandparents, for my little parish in Newburyport, Massachusetts, where Father Leonard was I don't know what they do, tried or something by the church and found to have engaged in behavior. He had a long-term affair with a divorced woman. And the church, what they did to him, they did not defrock him. They did not take his retirement. They did not do that. What they did was they forbade him to celebrate Mass in public. Like, he could no longer lead Mass in a church. And so what happened was there was this little group of elderly women who loved Father Leonard so much that they would host Mass in their homes.
Mm.
And my aunt was one of those. And when I learned after he died of this relationship, there was yet another layer of, you knew and you tolerated that offense.
Yes.
You did nothing to hold this man who came to our house every Christmas Eve for dinner.
Oh my God.
Right? I cooked Christmas Eve dinner, which, okay, this is a New England thing, and maybe it's an Irish thing, and I don't know. We always had creamed salt cod. My first girlfriend referred to it as smells like fish tank cleanings. She did not like it. I love it. For me, it's comfort food. Okay. But it was somehow in our family, it became the thing you have on Christmas Eve. Right.
Yeah.
And so Father Leonard would come over for Christmas Eve. And I'm the only one in the family who remembers how to make a bechamel. So I was the one who did this thing. And every year, Christmas Eve, he was there. Knowing that he was still living part-time with this woman.
Wow.
Okay. But to acknowledge that out loud means that they would have to share complicity.
Right. They would have to do something about it.
And so, yeah. And there is so much complex PTSD, which is different from regular PTSD.
Yeah.
Right. Because the trauma, it's trauma plus betrayal, which is just a horrible, horrible, poisonous mix.
Yeah.
Right. And it leads, like those of us who are Gen X who don't trust anything. Right. We don't trust any institution. We don't trust our parents. They lied to us from day one. We don't rely on other people terribly well. Right?
Yeah.
So I am sure there are people, not unlike my family, who have this knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's Father Leonard.
Yeah.
And he comes for Christmas, and my grandmother loved him. He did my grandmother's funeral. He's dead, so he won't do my aunt's funeral. Not that I'd have let him anyway, but Um, but, you know,
Yeah.
the power of denial, that power protects us
Yeah.
from our own guilt and shame.
I think you're right. I think so. So it's interesting because I think there are those who are in denial because they don't, because they're
They don't want to believe that their beloved thing is capable of this.
right. And then there are those, including in the United States, including those in every country who are choosing to support right wing fascism,
Right.
who very much know what's happening and why,
Yep.
and are on signing on. That's, to me, that's a painful truth that
Yes.
I think has been cleared. Well, I think when the hate pumpkin won, when Trump won, watching how many white liberals were surprised was fascinating, because I think there's a sentiment, there was, I don't think anymore, of white liberals that the minimizing or the disbelief that there were actual other white people in this country who want white supremacy, and beyond the KKK, like just casual, like white people are supposed to run the world, they're supposed to run the United States.
Yeah.
So I think there are a group of people who are actively signing on to supremacy.
Yep.
Pick your supremacy, right?
Right. Yep.
Really white supremacy, because that's what this country's funding, even in Israel. And then there are those who, just like you said, who are in denial, who don't want to think it's that bad, or who want to make it just about three people in either government, the Israeli government, the United States. And then the challenge for the realists, those who have a more shared reality with the people who are oppressed, is we're hoarse from screaming and saying, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. Millions of people across the globe in cafes holding the Palestinian flag have said, enough, 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 stop it, stop it, stop it. And it hasn't stopped. It's gotten worse. So there's this mix. There's no monolith. I never said there was. There's a mix of people who have been screaming and crying, and those who've been dying themselves in Palestine, in Lebanon, and wherever else that this regional war is going to expand to. And I'm Egyptian. The Egyptian army is itching. They're I mean, it's so.
Can I? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What we can't do is give in to the bullies, give in to the pressure to say, oh my God, you're anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Semitic. I was part of a Jewish family for 30 fucking years, and my children are half Jewish. I refuse to accept that telling the truth is anti-Semitic. It is in fact not. And I want to lift up Jewish voices for peace. I want to lift up every single Jewish person who has said this is wrong. Do not annihilate another country and another group of people in my name. Jewish people have said that en masse.
Right. What we are doing with our complicity, with our full-throated endorsement, including guns and money, is nurturing the terrorists who will strike with the next 9/11 because they're tired of being on the pointy end of the genocide stick and feel that their only way to be heard is to do something big and outrageous that hits the U.S. at home. Because we're willing to let anything off the Western Hemisphere happen.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Beirut, Tehran, Tel Aviv, whatever, they're bombing each other. It doesn't really affect, us here in central Pennsylvania. What we are doing, though, is being seen very clearly. Damascus, yep. what we are doing, though, is seen very clearly by those on the receiving end of our bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not only blaming the nation, the government of Israel, they are blaming us.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, howdy, we are a big, fat, relatively easy target.
Here's my thing. I don't disagree with you. We have 3 minutes left. And we need to do the right thing and stop being a military industrial complex
Yep.
and spreading empire, because we shouldn't not support a genocide because we're afraid of being attacked. We should not support a genocide because it's wrong. And
Right.
I mean, I take your point, and I think the bubble 9/11 burst the bubble that we're in that we are I don't know what the word is, like immune from any of this. But regardless of that, we have impenetrable. We have thank you, Tanya. We have gun violence in this country.
Oh,
we're
Jesus
letting,
Christ,
we're letting
right?
7 and 5-year-olds die in classrooms. So this is where, like, this thinking, this death culture that is the United States, we got a lot of soul searching to do. We're not a pro-life. I mean, Roe v. Wade got overturned. Women are dying because they can't get health care. Reproductive rights. It's about bodily autonomy of any gender, anyone with a uterus. So, in the last 2 minutes, I will say our charge as people of faith is to tell the hard truths. Otherwise, we're complicit. Tell the truth. That is the least we can do.
Right.
Yeah, death for capitalism, violent extractive capitalism.
Can I?
Yeah.
Just because you and I both, I mean, we can get on a tear, and both of our blood pressure goes up, right? When we get passionate about stuff. And so I want to just, before we hang up and go off air and I don't see you again for another week,
Mm-hmm.
Can we take a moment to just sort of center and
Yes.
and remember to breathe in all the way down to your toes and breathe out. Do it again. Breathe in and breathe out. And my prayer for us, for those of us, for Aisha and I, and for those who are listening or watching or will be watching a later version of this, let us not lose our passion, but let our passion guide us and protect us from becoming that which we hate. Let us remember that all people are capable of great horror and of great love. And when people act badly out of fear, it does not minimize the actions. The actions are still bad. The harm is still real. And reparations need to happen. Healing needs to happen. Accountability and atonement need to happen. And I pray that each of us is able to give and receive the grace necessary for us to live in this world. Amen.
Amen and Ashe. And Ben, on a future show, we will answer the question, how can we love those who oppress us? That is Martin Luther King preached the whole sermon on it.
It might be above my pay grade.
Yeah. Martin Luther King, I'll leave us with this. Martin Luther King said, we have to love our neighbor, not like them, because we can't like somebody who's trying to kill us. But we are not called to love our neighbor in terms of touchy-feely. I think it's, let us not continue the cycle of harm. Revenge does not bring peace.
Amen.
With that, we'll see you next week. You, the vote, coming back. Thank you all. This was a very... It was a show. Thank you, DC. It was a show.
And thank you. This was good. This was good. All right. Be well, everybody.
Be well.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.